The darkness outside the observation deck wasn't like the usual void of space. It was thicker, deeper. Ethan Cole floated weightlessly, his eyes locked on the endless stretch beyond the reinforced glass. Stars flickered faintly in the distance, but tonight they seemed dimmer, quieter, as if something had muted them. His breath fogged a small patch of the glass, and for the first time in a long while, he felt small. Not the kind of small astronauts usually feel when gazing at the infinite universe. No, this was different. This was wrong. Artemis 1 to Control, he called out, his voice sharp but steady. Come in, Control. I'm getting some strange visuals out here. He waited, counting the seconds in his head, expecting the familiar hiss of static to break the silence. But nothing came. No static. No background hum. Nothing. He frowned, glancing at the console in front of him. Everything was green. No malfunctions. No interruptions. The comms were open, but no one was listening. Control, do you copy? He asked again, his voice tighter now. Still, the silence pressed down on him. It wasn't like normal silence. This was the kind of silence that watched you. His fingers hovered over the console, running a manual system check. Everything showed normal. Comms online. Life support stable. External sensors clear. But that feeling gnawed at him, like an itch buried beneath the skin. It had been subtle at first, just an odd sense of stillness. But now it was undeniable. Something was off. He gazed back at the vast black canvas outside the glass. Stars dotted the expanse, scattered like grains of salt on obsidian. For a moment, everything seemed still, normal. But then, it moved. Ethan's breath caught in his throat. He didn't know what it was at first. Just a flicker in his peripheral vision, a shift in the darkness. His eyes darted to the source, muscles tense, heart pounding in his chest. But there was nothing there. His eyes scanned the void, slow and deliberate, searching for anything that felt out of place. And then he saw it. It wasn't movement exactly. It was absence. A patch of darkness that was just a little too dark. A void within a void. It didn't shimmer like distant stars, or glow faintly like passing debris. It was flat, lifeless, and still. His eyes strained to focus on it, but the more he tried, the less certain he became of its shape. It wasn't solid. It wasn't liquid. It was just there, and it was growing. Control, I have a visual anomaly at my 12 o'clock, he said, louder this time, his voice more forceful. His pulse thudded in his ears. Please confirm. No response. He clenched his jaw and leaned closer to the glass, his eyes narrowing as he tracked the movement. It wasn't fast. It didn't lurch forward or dart suddenly. It was slow, calculated, like it knew he was watching. A chill ran down his spine. No, that was impossible. It was just debris, he told himself. Just a chunk of asteroid passing by. But debris doesn't move with intent. The dark shape shifted again, bending unnaturally, like a liquid shadow curling into itself. Ethan's breath hitched, and his fingers gripped the edge of the console. He blinked hard, trying to clear his vision, hoping it was some trick of the glass, or maybe his eyes adjusting to the low light. But it wasn't. It was still there, still growing. Control, come in, he said again, this time louder, trying to sound calm. Possible contact with unidentified anomaly. Requesting status update on sensor readouts. His eyes flicked back to the console. No pings, no alerts, no warnings. But he didn't need the system to tell him something was there. He could feel it. It wasn't something the senses could detect. This was different. This was personal. Come on, he muttered, flipping switches, rerouting power to the long-range scanners. Data streamed across the screen in rapid green text. But the system found nothing. No mass, no radiation, no energy signatures. As far as the Artemis station was concerned, there was nothing outside that window. But Ethan knew better. His instincts, honed from years of training, were screaming now. Not the logical, calculated part of his mind, but the deeper, older part of him. The part that remembered what it felt like to be hunted. The darkness moved again. Closer this time. Closer than before. It was no longer a distant patch of black. It was right there, just beyond the glass. Ethan's heart pounded against his ribs, like it was trying to escape. His breath came faster, short, shallow gasps. His eyes were locked on the shadow, unable to look away, and then, for the first time, something changed. 2 faint glints of light blinked from the darkness. Like eyes, watching him. His heart stopped. Not figuratively, not dramatically. It stopped, just for a beat, long enough for him to feel the suffocating dread flood every inch of his body. He drifted backward, slow, weightless. His gaze locked on those 2 cold, unblinking points of light. They weren't random. They weren't reflections. They were looking at him. Control? He whispered, his voice barely audible. I think something's looking back. Silence. The lights blinked once, slowly, purposefully, and then the shadow began to move. Ethan's breaths came shallow and fast, the steady rhythm of his heartbeat, now a chaotic drum pounding in his ears. He pushed off the wall with his hands, gliding weightlessly toward the emergency locker at the far end of the room. His eyes never left the window. The 2 glinting points of light were still there, unblinking, unshifting, watching, tracking him. Stay calm, stay calm, he whispered to himself, his fingers fumbling for the latch on the locker. The magnetic seal hissed open, revealing a set of emergency tools, a small oxygen pack, and, most importantly, the EVA suit. His hands shook as he pulled it out, eyes darting back to the window every few seconds. The shadow had grown, no longer a formless patch of darkness. It had mass now. Not solid, but definite. Like a fog given purpose, it clung to the edge of the observation deck window, pressing against the glass, distorting the faint light of the distant stars. It moved with eerie grace, slow but deliberate, like it had all the time in the world. The points of light, those eyes, followed his every movement, shifting subtly as he floated from one side of the cabin to the other. Control, he tried again, slapping the comm panel with the heel of his hand. Please respond. I have visual contact with an unknown entity. I repeat, unknown entity present at observation deck. His breathing was loud in his ears. Too loud. Do you copy? The silence hit harder than any response could have. Ethan's jaw clenched as he yanked the EVA suit over his legs, struggling to maneuver in zero gravity. The fabric stuck against his sweat-dampened arms, but he forced it on, one sleeve at a time. Every movement felt like an eternity. He kept glancing at the window. The shape pressed closer. His mind raced with possibilities. Space debris? No, it was too controlled. Plasma discharge? Impossible. It would be detected by the ship's sensors. Hallucination. He clenched his fists, trying to push away the idea that he was losing his grip on reality. No, this was real. This was happening. As he secured the suit's torso seal, the lights flickered. Once, twice. The gentle hum of the station's life support systems dipped for a fraction of a second before surging back to normal. Ethan froze, his fingers hovering over the wrist-locking mechanism of his suit. Power fluctuations. That never happened. Not on Artemis 1. The system was designed with triple redundancy. No power loss. Not ever. He glanced at the console. All lights were green, systems nominal. But his gut told him otherwise. He knew space stations didn't just glitch. Something was affecting the system. He turned back to the window. The shadow was gone. His heart stopped for the second time. No, 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 no. His eyes scanned every inch of the window, searching for the inky darkness that had been pressed against it only seconds before. It was just the void of space again. Endless black spotted with distant stars. For a brief moment, he felt relief. Maybe it was a trick of the light. Maybe I imagined it. Then something knocked. 3 sharp, deliberate knocks echoed through the metal hull, coming from the left side of the cabin. Ethan spun in midair, his breath caught in his throat. His eyes locked on the source of the sound, the airlock chamber. The sealed metal hatch was at least 20 feet away, bolted shut, secured with a biometric lock. Nobody could be on the other side. No one was supposed to be outside. The knocks came again, 3 precise taps. He drifted back, slow and careful. His gaze locked on the airlock door. His fingers reached for the tool rack next to him, gripping the first object he could find. A maintenance wrench. It wasn't much, but it was something. Who's there? His voice cracked. Stupid question. No one is there. No one is supposed to be there. His pulse pounded in his ears. Every thud of his heart like a distant drumbeat in an ancient jungle. The airlock hatch was still. The sound wasn't coming from inside. It was coming from outside. The realization hit him like a physical blow. There's something outside the ship. His breath quickened. His eyes darted to the external camera feed displayed on the console. He tapped the screen to cycle views. Rear thrusters, cargo bay, solar arrays, starboard hull. He watched each view in quick succession, scanning the empty metal surface of the ship. Nothing. 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 Knock. 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 He flinched, eyes darting back to the airlock. It was closer this time. Louder. No, he muttered, his voice shaking now. No, you're not here. You can't be here. He tapped the console furiously, initiating a thermal scan of the hull. The display loaded slowly, too slowly. Sweat dripped from his brow, and his breaths were coming in sharp, shallow gasps. Come on, come on! The scan lit up, a single bright red spot on the edge of the airlock door. His blood ran cold. It was right there, just on the other side. The thermal signature pulsed slowly, like a heartbeat. It's alive. He backed away, his fingers gripping the wrench tighter. His thoughts spiraled, trying to rationalize. It had to be a misread, an error in the system. It's debris, it's radiation, but deep down, he knew better. It's watching me. The airlock hatch began to hum. Ethan's eyes widened in horror. No, 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 no. The indicator lights above the hatch flashed amber. The system was disengaging the lock. His heart slammed against his chest as he launched himself toward the console. His fingers flew across the controls, overriding the airlock command. Access denied, he shouted, hitting the manual override. The lights flashed red. Lock restored. He floated backward, panting, his fingers still hovering over the controls. He stared at the hatch like it was a ticking bomb. For several long seconds, nothing happened. Silence. Absolute, complete silence. Maybe I stopped it. Maybe I stopped it in time. Then with a screech of grinding metal, something slid across the outer hull. His eyes shot to the external camera feed. His fingers tapped frantically to switch views, searching for the source of the noise. He scrolled past the rear thrusters, the cargo bay, the solar arrays. He stopped. A figure crawled across the hull. It was no astronaut, no human. Its limbs moved with a slow, unsettling grace, like it wasn't bound by the same rules of movement as humans. Long jointed arms pulled it forward with ease. Its body was lean, elongated, with sharp, angular contours that didn't match any known design for drones or equipment. Its head was small, almost insect-like, with two glowing white eyes that burned like distant stars. The air in Ethan's lungs turned to ice. His mind refused to accept what he was seeing, but his instincts screamed louder than logic. He watched in paralyzed horror as it crawled closer, fingers tapping gently along the hull, testing every surface it touched. The way it moved was deliberate, as though it was searching for something. It paused, then slowly, its head turned. It looked directly at the camera. Ethan's breath caught in his throat. "It sees me." He reached for the emergency alarm, but stopped himself. "Don't make noise. Don't let it know where you are." The figure tilted its head, studying the camera like a predator watching prey. A slow, deliberate motion. "It knows I'm watching." Then, in one sudden burst of motion, it charged. The feed cut to static. "No!" Ethan shouted, slamming his fist into the console. "No, no, no!" He tried to restore the feed, fingers smashing buttons in frantic succession. His breathing was wild, his heart about to burst from his chest. "Don't let it in. Don't let it in." Then he heard it. The airlock door hissed. The lights flashed amber. His eyes darted to the hatch. A low guttural clicking sound echoed from the other side. Not a knock this time. This was something else. A slow, deliberate tapping. Like claws dragging down metal. The lights flashed red. The hatch lock disengaged. Ethan's scream echoed through the cabin as the hatch slowly began to open. The cold vacuum of space surged into the cabin with a force that yanked Ethan forward. His fingers clawed at the console edge, boots scraping against the wall as he fought to hold his position. His scream was lost in the deafening roar of rushing air. Loose objects spiraled past him. A maintenance pad, a stray glove, a toolkit, all sucked toward the opening airlock. "No, no, no!" His mind raced with panic, adrenaline hitting like a bolt of lightning. The emergency bulkhead should have slammed shut automatically, sealing the breach, but it didn't. The red hazard lights flashed in rapid succession, and the sound of blaring alarms only added to the chaos. The air was vanishing fast. The system's compromised. It's controlling everything. Then he saw it. A black clawed hand, thin and angular like a metal sculpture, gripped the inside edge of the airlock hatch. Slowly, it pulled itself through. First, the head appeared, elongated, smooth, and eerily symmetrical, with those two blazing white eyes fixed on him. They didn't blink. They didn't flicker. They just stared. The creature crawled in with unnatural ease, like gravity didn't apply to it. Limbs moved in slow, calculated movements, each joint rotating too far, too fluidly. It didn't walk. It glided, arms and legs moving with disturbing synchronicity. Its frame was impossibly thin, but carried a sense of coiled strength, like a predator waiting to pounce. Ethan's breathing hitched. He squeezed himself into the corner of the room, his back pressed against cold metal. He glanced to his right. The emergency EVA suit was still half sealed on his body, not enough to protect him. He was exposed. No oxygen, no suit, nowhere to run. His eyes darted to the emergency hatch override switch on the far wall. If he could just close it, maybe he could trap it. But it's too far. I'll never reach it. The creature's head tilted in that unnatural, predatory way, almost like it was listening to his thoughts. Its movements were slow, deliberate, and without fear. It wasn't in a hurry. It knew it had him cornered. Ethan's breath came in shallow, controlled bursts as his survival instincts kicked in. Don't panic. Stay quiet. Stay small. It's observing. It doesn't know everything yet. He glanced at the wrench floating near him. just out of reach, too far to grab without drawing attention. Don't move, don't make a sound. His mind replayed survival drills from training, but none of those drills included this. The creature crouched lower, balancing on all fours like a beast preparing to spring. The glow of its eyes dimmed slightly, narrowing like pupils focusing on prey. It's studying me, assessing, calculating. His chest heaved with every breath, each inhale feeling like a countdown to disaster. Suddenly, it moved, a blur of motion, faster than anything should be able to move in zero gravity. Ethan barely registered it before it was on the ceiling, limbs splayed out like a spider. Its head twisted around, eyes locking on him from above. Its breath, yes, its breathing, was a low guttural rasp, like air being pulled through dry leaves. He had no time to think. Instinct took over. He pushed off the wall, launching himself toward the wrench, fingers outstretched. Come on, come on! His fingertips brushed the cold metal. Yes, he grabbed it, turned midair, ready to swing. But it was already there. Its face was inches from his own. Its eyes, brighter than ever, bore into him, so close that he could see faint spirals of light dancing inside them. No iris, no pupils, just two vortexes of white, endless light. He felt exposed, like it could see straight through him, like it could see him. Every fear, every doubt, every secret. The moment stretched into eternity. Then it spoke, not with a voice, not with words. The sound was inside his mind, like a crack of thunder that vibrated through his skull, a sharp, visceral click, click, click that resonated behind his eyes. His body jerked involuntarily, his muscles tensing as if he'd been struck by lightning. He screamed, clutching his head, but the sound was swallowed by the void. His vision blurred. Pain lanced through his temples, and for a moment, everything went white. When his senses returned, he was floating, slowly, weightlessly. The alarm was still blaring, but it sounded distant, muffled. His head felt wrong, like his mind had been twisted in a way it was never meant to be twisted. He blinked slowly, trying to reorient himself. The creature was gone. He spun, eyes darting around the cabin, searching every corner, every surface. Where is it? Where did it go? His heart pounded in his chest like a war drum. His breath came in sharp, shallow gasps. His eyes locked on the airlock hatch. It was closed, sealed. No breach, no sign of the entity, no sign of anything. Control! Ethan gasped into the comms, his voice hoarse. Please respond. Unknown contact breached the station. I repeat, breached the station. His heart was racing, sweat dripping down his face in beads. Entity disappeared, possibly still on board. Static. No response. He floated toward the console, muscles still tight from the shock. His fingers hovered over the keys as he pulled up the ship's diagnostics. Air pressure had normalized. Bulkhead integrity was secure. All green, no sign of a breach. His fingers shook as he ran a whole scan. The screen flashed blue, processing, and within moments, it displayed the station's exterior. All clear. No signs of life. No thermal signatures. No movement. Impossible. Ethan muttered, his eyes flicking between the screen and the airlock. His breathing slowed, but his nerves didn't. He kept looking over his shoulder, expecting to see it perched behind him. It didn't leave. It's hiding. He checked the airlock log. No entries. No record of the door opening. The system claimed it had been sealed for the past 3 hours. He tapped his head, trying to shake the fog from his mind. I'm not crazy. I saw it. I know I saw it. Then the console flickered. Not a glitch. Not a flicker. A pattern. A flash of symbols danced across the screen. Alien runes he'd never seen before. The characters spun and shifted, like they were trying to form words. Not human, not random. Control, do you see this? He asked, trying to stay calm. I'm seeing foreign symbols on the console. His breathing quickened. His eyes darted to the camera feed. It was still static. They don't want me to see. The symbols flashed again. Quicker this time. Then they stopped. 2 words remained on the screen. Clear as day. We see. Ethan's blood turned to ice. He backed away from the console, every survival instinct screaming at him to run. But where? He spun around, eyes searching every inch of the cabin. Nothing. No shadows. No movement. Then the emergency lights flickered again. Not random. They flickered in 3s. Click, click, click. He froze. His breath caught in his throat as he slowly turned his head toward the window. It was pitch black. The stars beyond were distant pinpricks of light, but one pinprick was larger than the rest. Closer. Brighter. The light shifted. No, it didn't shift. It blinked. It wasn't a star. It was an eye. Ethan's chest tightened as the realization hit him like a sledgehammer. The glow wasn't coming from outside the ship. It was coming from inside the window. No, he muttered, his voice cracking. No, 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 no! He pushed off the wall, desperate to get away, but the glow followed him. It's in the reflection. His hands clawed at the emergency bulkhead release, fingers frantic, movements wild. His breath came in rapid, panicked bursts. Control! He screamed. It's here. It's in here with me. But this time, something answered. A low guttural click, click, click echoed behind him. Ethan's eyes widened in horror. As his whole body went still, slowly he turned his head. Muscles locked with terror. The glow of those 2 white eyes hovered inches from his face. Then the lights went out.